Man, this dotAIO is just so good. I wish there was a small handsome boy with a receding hairline to do an in-depth review. Oh wait. That's me.
Right when you take it out of the box, you understand what you paid for. The polished gold 510 mouthpiece, the minimalistic design with only a small gold dotMod logo appearing, and the small intricate engravings on the firing switch with RGB lights surrounding it. And just because, they also include this beautiful Alta mouthpiece with a very small hole designed for a tight mouth to lung draw. There's a nice variety of beautiful colors, but of course if you want to make it look even better, you can actually replace the plain doors with the laser engraved chrysanthemum doors in matching or contrasting colors. Or of course one of their fantastic painted doors like I have here. The one con is the fact that these are made out of plastic, but I don't even care because of how sick this looks. And yes, these doors are on the more expensive side at $26.99 a set, but who cares, look how pretty this is. Now it's time to take off these beautiful doors and see what is concealed underneath. Starting with the face of the device, you get a sled for your 18650, a small gold button, your firing switch, and small rubber stoppers to hide the magnets and screws. We'll talk about that tiny button, don't you worry. The door on the front is nothing too crazy, having a tiny cutout ensuring that the battery stays in place, and of course the little cutout for the firing switch and this tiny little button. Now let's go on to the backside, which is where we're going to find our serial number, warnings, and the classic Apple move of designed in California, made in China. This is also where we get access to the pod, but this is also where it gets interesting. You can see how dotMod's tapered the bottom of where the pod sits because this actually lines up with the airflow cutouts on the door. They actually provide you with a sticker if you want to cover up the slot on the door to cut the airflow down to the bottom channel only. Otherwise, both channels are being used. Like I said, these doors have tight tolerances, so even if you cover up the side window by accident, you won't be getting anything but this smooth bottom channel airflow. The last part of design I want to talk about is the pod itself, and if you've ever used a billet box, well, this is a lot better. I always found the billet box to kind of be a pain when you need to change your coil out, and I do understand it was the first press fit, but come on man, the dotMod system just works way better. There's super tight tolerances, and the only screwing that you need to do is the coil into the airflow base. Other than that, everything easily press fits into the whole pod. The filling system is a silicone stopper, which I normally despise, but even with no fingernails, this is easy to pop open. However, not having fingernails makes taking the pod out a little bit more difficult, but I'm happy they included this tab on the top and a little cutout for your finger to grab it. Oh yeah, there's also a USB-C port that comes with a matching USB-C dotMod charging cable, which is pretty cool. I don't use this because I have a battery charger and a handful of batteries, but I do think it's really cool that they included USB-C on this. Now let's move on to the features of the device. So when a device looks as minimal as this one does, you don't expect any features farther than an on-off mechanism, but boy howdy did they do this one right. So let's start off with that little button I showed you earlier. What this little button does is actually switch you between the different wattage settings indicated by the LED strip around the button. While I don't know what the exact wattages are, I can tell you that there's definitely a clear difference between each one. I personally prefer using 2 lights because the 3 gives me flashbacks. The most notable feature about this device is the fact that it actually has a dry burn protection, which is just a fancy word for temperature control. Spike in temperature from the lack of juice cooling the coil, it'll actually flash purple and cut the power so you don't burn it out. This has saved me a couple times when I wasn't paying attention to my juice level, and it works extremely well because I haven't gotten a single dry hit. Now normally I hate temperature control because I can never get it to work the way I want it to, but having this nice reliable and simple version of it is kind of converting me because I can always get a consistent vape out of this. So the last feature I wanted to speak about actually involves the coils, so let's get into it. When it comes to coils, you actually have a pretty large spectrum to choose from. But let's start out with the dotMod coils since those are probably going to be the most common ones used. So included in the box you get a 0.3 ohm mesh coil which caps out at about 35 watts, and then you also get a 1.6 ohm coil which is meant for more mouth to lung vaping, and that caps at a lower wattage. I can't find the numbers. So I've been a huge fan of these 0.3 ohm mesh coils, and they're giving me insane flavor using regular freebase juice. Another thing to note is the fact that I haven't had any wicking issues using a 70-30 VGPG juice. So I usually run these coils with about 3/4 to a full airflow just because it's smooth as glass. And honestly, these coils are the reason that I actually purchased this mod. It just works so well. So moving on to the 1.6 ohm coil, this one's definitely meant for mouth to lung vaping or salt nicotine if that's what your jam is. These coils provide you with a nice tight draw that I usually run at about a half airflow because it gives you a proper mouth to lung experience. If you ask me, mesh coils aren't the greatest thing for mouth to lung vaping because the round wires always work just so much better. Just to make a comparison, if you loved using the Nautilus tank, then you're definitely going to love that dotMod 1.6 coil. Or you'll even just love using Nautilus coils. While it's pretty clear to see that dotMod actually took the design from Aspire for their coils, they're smart, so they actually gave you an adapter so you can still run Nautilus coils. Albeit there is a little bit more work you need to do when you're changing out your coils since there's more things to screw in, but if you want to try something new or you can't find any dotMod coils, then you have a perfect option. Especially since we carry 0.7 mesh coils from Aspire, the 1.6, other 0.7 coils. We have a lot of Aspire coils. You have a lot of options for this thing. The last coil option they offer is actually where you start getting all the control because they actually made a rebuildable section for this thing. dotMod has always made fantastic RDAs and RTAs, which is really how they got their name out there. So unsurprisingly, they did a fantastic job with this rebuildable section, and if you want to either start saving some more money or customize a little bit extra, then get the rebuildable section. You have a curved deck to provide smooth airflow, large wicking ports, and a postless drop-in deck to help cut down on space. And of course, if you put a really nice coil in this thing, you're going to have an amazing experience that won't really cost much to maintain. But end of the day, as long as you aren't using super sweet juice, then these dotMod coils are going to last you quite a long time. So of course these coils are good on paper, but how exactly do they vape? To say the least, it's unreal. Just how good is it? Well, look at this picture and it should speak for itself. These are what all my friends and I are using. The draw is fantastic, the battery life is fantastic, and it doesn't even matter what coil you put in here because they all work fantastically. So honestly, I'm very snobby when it comes to airflow on vapes, and if it doesn't sound right or it doesn't feel right, I'm not even going to go near it, never mind purchasing it. But of course, dotMod has always been #1 in this department, and it has a super smooth, whooshy airflow, and you just gotta hear this. Where did I put my vape? Man, I thought I had it on me. Is it beside you, Nikita? I absolutely love using the 0.3 mesh coil in this thing. It's what finally got me off using salt nicotine. But don't get me wrong, if you love using salt nicotine, then you're absolutely going to love this thing, especially with that really nice mouth to lung drip tip that they included. It's super similar to the Berserker RTA, which is stupid comfy. That's one of the things that dotMod does best. I don't know how they figure it out every single time, but they always have the absolute perfect diameter for a mouthpiece. Now, before I leave y'all today, it's time to summarize my final thoughts and note any cons that I've found. So let's get the cons out of the way because there really isn't any. So I'm sure you're wondering if it leaks, and to be completely honest, one time I had a couple drops of juice in there. That's about it. But even then, you aren't even going to notice it because it's all sitting in the pod compartment and doesn't flood the coil. End of the day, this is a high-end device, so you should be cleaning it out a lot, so if there is any juice, you're going to be getting rid of it anyway. There was the other con that I mentioned before, which is that the extra fancy doors are plastic, so if you don't like that, just don't buy any of those doors. Just go buy the chrysanthemum. Honestly, I wish I picked one of these things up sooner, and being able to have this many customizations means everyone can have a unique setup. I've had battery life for days using this 0.3 ohm coil, and obviously new batteries are going to give you even better battery life, but all I have is some old 18650s I've had laying around. If you've been on the fence and thinking about getting this thing for a little while, I hope you'll be like me after this video and finally pull the trigger because I have zero regrets. If I lost this thing today, I would definitely wait till payday and go buy another one. With the price tag of $124.99 Canadian, I can confidently say that it's worth every single penny. And that's all for today's review. I hope you enjoyed this video, and of course if you want to see more like it, leave a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe and click that bell button so that way you're informed every time we post a brand new video. My name's Cam from Flamingo, and I'll see you in the next one.